What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the shop. Today, once again, I'm back on the OBS. We're getting closer and closer every day. We're going to be throwing a new set of shocks, going through the brake system, putting the locker and a fresh set of gears in the rear axle, doing everything on the underside once over so that we can get, once again, a few more steps down and that much closer to the finish line. So sit back, grab your favorite beverage, favorite snack, hang out, enjoy the show. Maybe you'll learn something. Maybe you'll teach me something. Anyways, you're going to want to stay tuned for this one. You're also going to want to come back next week because we're probably going to get to drive it for the first time with the new engine. That's going to be exciting. It's actually back together right here, but I won't give you too much of a glimpse of that. So I hope you all have a happy Thursday. Let's get to it. Alright, we're going to get this diff cover off, get the fluid drained, see what the gears and everything inside look like. Honestly, it looks pretty clean. I have topped it off because it's been leaking, so. Now, some of y'all are probably wondering, well, why are you rebuilding the rear end? It doesn't look out because it's drivable. And you'd be right, it's not out. The wear doesn't look awful. But I don't like how much play there is in here. Let me show you what I mean. So, watch. This is what I'm doing. That's the amount of play. Which is not crazy, but we've got some play in our pin there, which kind of worries me. I've got to remember, this thing's got 200-something thousand miles. It's not completely out, but we're also going to go from probably 220 horsepower to 600 or 700. That's a lot of abuse, and I'm kind of worried about it. The other thing is this is an open differential, also known as a one-tire fryer, because this is the only tire that will spin. You can spin the shaft up here and it will spin both, but as soon as you put some pressure on that tire, it's not spinning it. So for performance reasons, what I want to do is, this is a 373 gear ratio. I want to put a 342 because the overdrive, fourth gear overdrive in the 4L80 is slightly taller than the 700 R4 that was originally in this truck. And because of the turbo and boost and all that, it's going to light, the power is going to feel better on the low end to some extent. Definitely from the old worn out 350. So lower gear will keep me around 2,000 RPMs at about 70, which is ideal for road trips and fuel mileage and things like that. And it will still be plenty fun to drive, with 10 pounds of boost. Normal race applications, a lot of times you want to go a little bit lower gear, which a lower gear is a larger number. It's like this is a 373, so this is a lower gear than the 342 I want to put in here. But while I'm doing all that, I want to put a locker, which will allow both tires to lock up under acceleration or torque input from the drive line. But then when you go around a corner, it will unlock so that it can your inner tire can kind of hold still and your outer tire will pivot around and help you steer. If you put like a spool or you lock this 100%, then your inside tires wants to kind of chirp on the concrete or the pavement as you're turning because it's 100% locked. It's great for traction, but not great for drivability. So the best all around is a little bit lower gear, a little bit higher gear, sorry. Lower number, higher gear with a locker. Be better to put power to the ground. That's the other thing. Trying to put 400 horsepower to one tire you're never going to do it. If you can try to split it between two tires, you're better off. I mean, it's still probably going to roast the tires off, but yeah, I don't love how much play is in the spider gears. So these are your spider gears. Ring gear, pinion gears back there. This is the carrier. So we're going to be replacing the ring and pinion that come in a match set. The spider gears will go away because the locker replaces this whole assembly. We'll put fresh bearings in here. Also got a little bit too much side play. It's wore out. Pretty much what it comes down to. Would like to run the number though and make sure that we got a 373 here. It's usually stamped. It's got numbers. It's a GM gear. 13 and 40. That sounds kind of accurate, but maybe it's a 430 pinion and a 40 tooth ring. That would put it at 307. That doesn't. Wow, that is a 308. 307, 308. I swear the RPO code in the glove box said 373. So, I might need to rethink my plan here. Do I want to go up to a 342? The bad thing is I haven't driven this thing on the highway with this engine and transmission combination. But I know one thing, even when it wasn't fully tuned before we went to LS Fest, when I took it up and down the road, just like idle to 3,500, which is about all I had kind of played with in the tune, and it seemed pretty quick. Light the tire up, no problem. So maybe I just go back with the 307. I'm gonna have to think on that. But like I said, I am rather scared to, with as much play as that has, like, that's just asking for trouble, I think. Try to do a hard launch and the tires stick on the pavement, something's gonna break. So we're gonna leave that like it is for now. I'm gonna get the tires off of it, the brakes off of it. We're gonna see what that looks like. And while I'm doing all that, I'm gonna be thinking, do I wanna stick with the 307? I've been using one of the online calculators trying to figure out like tire height with road speed and how engine RPM at 2,000 kind of thing, or road speed at engine RPM, and trying to compare what's best, because I want as good a fuel mileage as possible because we're going to drive this truck a lot and we're going on the road trip. But I also don't want it like, you can go too tall a gear and then it's just, the taller the gear, the lower RPM you'll be at a higher speed, and you'll be able to go a faster speed. Your top speed will be faster, but you lose your low end takeoff speed. So there's definitely a fine line, and the motor, transmission, power combination all kind of plays a factor in that, which this is kind of untested. And I don't remember what this setup was like in the other truck I pulled it out of. It's been so many years since I drove it. That truck had 373s in it, but I'm pretty sure it was like 2300 on the highway. Which that's a little more than I want because you're just burning extra fuel at that point. So I'm gonna have to figure that out. That's interesting. Like I said, I'm crazy shocked at how loose all that is. Anyways, that's enough of that. Let's get the tires off and start checking out the brakes. I know this wheel seal over here is pretty sure it's either the axle seal or the wheel cylinder for the brakes. I'm pretty sure it's the wheel cylinder because it looks more like brake fluid. But we'll get it apart and see what we got to work with. They're so light compared to the Scout. So while we're here, I'll explain my kind of future plans. 10 bolt rear ends, which is what's in this. They don't have a great track record in terms of abuse with high horsepower. So my plan is, after I get the whole build kind of tested and perfected, work out all the kinks and recuperate some of the money I've sunk into this over the last 6-8 months. My plan is I'm gonna pull this 10 bolt out. We're gonna put a Ford 9-inch, which is a lot more beef, pretty much bulletproof. And then we're gonna do 4-link, 3-link. I'm not real sure, but we're probably gonna get rid of the leaf springs and just get it to handle a little bit better. Because while this is kind of the shop truck, I'm gonna drive it. My wife's gonna drive it. It's gonna be a daily / spare truck / fun truck, weekend cruiser, whatever. We may do some drag racing with it. We may do some autocross, road course type stuff with it, which you can't really set up your suspension to do all of that well. There's some things we can do to make it perform better than it would currently in the stock setup. All right, so we clearly have a wheel cylinder. This is called a wheel cylinder. Your brake fluid comes in from your master and it pushes out these little rods that you can't really see, and it stretches your drums. And I can tell you it's that because this is what brake fluid does when it gets on paint. It bubbles and it flakes off. Stuff's nasty. And the good news is these brake pads look great. So I got to see how much those cost, and I might just, yeah, now you can see that play. Sounds even worse. I might try to clean these up and reuse them, but more than likely I'm just going to rebuild all this. But at the same time, thinking ahead in the next year or so, when I do the Ford 9-inch, that I'll probably convert over to disc brakes, more stopping power. So I may not end up spending a bunch of money rebuilding and replacing all of this. I might just do wheel cylinders, probably the axle seal. Bearings seem pretty good, but the axle seal for sure. Clean the shoes up. Might go ahead and run new rotors. They don't look awful, but they don't look great either. So that's the plan. I'm gonna pull the tire on the other side. I don't like taking any of these. There's lots of springs and things in here. I don't like taking any of that apart until I have the parts sitting here. I know what I'm doing. I've done this hundreds of times, but I also don't do it every day of the week, so it's nice to have kind of a map there of you leave one side, you take one side off, you replace it, and you jump back over. And I'm not trying to fight and look up pictures and remember how to do it from a week ago, or because they all look kind of different from each other, from vehicle to vehicle, make to model, year to year. So yeah, I'm gonna get the tire off. Well, this one's not so great. That one's all breaking apart. It's wearing weird. This one's got a lot more meat left in it. So if I'm changing one side, I'm changing all of them. This wheel cylinder is not leaking. Axle seal's leaking a little bit, but it's not bad. Alright, I decided the best approach is I'm going to leave all that together until I get the new parts. Again, it's straightforward, but I'd rather just have everything and I can swap it around real quick. But I do have new shocks, so we're going to go ahead and get those pulled apart, changed out. It's a good chance that the shocks are actually holding the rear end up, basically, like the shocks are bottomed out or extended all the way out. So I'm going to pick this up a little bit. We can get to that. So if you think your shocks are bad, the best test is to pull one off. You don't have to pull it off all the way. It should not be that easy, and it should come back down. I'll show you that on the new ones. Didn't go to plan. Shock is no longer shocking. Let's see. Oh, it's got a little resistance right there. Nope, dead. Alright, we got a fresh set of Bilsteins. Pretty high quality shock in my opinion. Even if they are yellow. I hate yellow, but I do like their shocks. They're nice. So, as you can see, this one's extended out. Let me see if I can even push it in. Very stiff. Now watch. That's what a shock's supposed to do. It actually shock absorbs. That's the whole purpose. These are a little bit shorter because the rear of this truck is actually lowered. It's leveled out, lowered like 1.5 inches, I think. So these shocks are actually for a 0 to 2 inch lower height. Not necessary, but it helps keep you from bottoming them out. What we gotta do there is line up our eyelet. Another way you can check to see if your shocks are blown out, if you don't want to take them off. Really easy on the truck. It's a little more difficult on like a car with plastic bumpers or whatever, but either jump up and down on the bumper or just take your hands and kind of push up and down real quick. If the truck bounces, your shocks need to be replaced. If you pushing down on it up and down and then you let off and it slowly kind of settles back, idles out, then your shocks are working. Oh, these are tested on the Nürburgring. That means they're approved for race cars. They're approved for me. Well, that would make a fun video. An old OBS shop truck on the Nürburgring. Both the exact same shock. This one Should have been fairly close. This is what you normally have to do. That other one was like too easy. Normally you have to push them up further and then fight with them. G-Force technology. Dead. This one's got a nice shiny sticker. Like racing stripes. I'll add 10 horsepower, huh? Oh, that one still got a little bit. Sounds like it had Taco Bell though. Junk. Well, that's going to be a wrap for me today. It's late. I'm going to go find some food, get a few hours of sleep, go pull a 10-hour shift at work, and then I'll be right back here to hit it again. So I'll see y'all in about 5 seconds. All right, we're going to work on rebuilding these brakes today. We got some parts came in. So we're going to start with this driver's side. We're going to take off all the shoes, replace those. We got a new axle wheel seal. We got new brake wheel cylinders. We're going to try to do both sides. I'm going to start with this side, leave that side together in case I need to bounce back and forth and reference how something goes. Typically, if you're doing this in the truck or in your driveway or whatever, you just work around this flange. There's plenty of room to do it. It's kind of annoying, but since I've got the rear end apart and I'm going to continue to take it apart, I'm going to go ahead and pull these axle shafts out, get me a whole bunch of room, make it 10 times easier. So first thing we got to do is we're going to pull this bolt, we're going to pull this pin, we're going to drop out the spider gears. No, let me back up. We're going to pull this bolt, we're going to drop out this pin, I'll push the axles in and drop out the C-clips, slide the axles out, and the spider gears will fall out, and we'll be right where we want to be. Well, that one actually came out pretty good. I've actually seen these in the past. They'll get hot and they'll kind of like mushroom themselves, and you literally have to cut it out of there. Alright, so if you look closely, I'm going to push the shaft in. You can see the snap ring, what they call a C-clip. You ever hear somebody saying, into like Fords are pretty big C-clip eliminators. Sometimes what will happen is you got some extra force, extra power. You can break these C-clips, or you can break the end of that off, or you can break a spider gear and the C-clip falls out, and then your axle and wheel will slide out of the truck. That's the ideal situation. Just push it in and it pops itself out. Make sure your splines are not twisted. That's bad news if they are. All right. Now we got to get this thing apart. Highly recommend taking a picture for reference. Like I said, leave the other side together so that as you take this one off, you go put it back in, you have something to reference. It will be kind of opposite, but idea where that goes. All right, that is how you change your drum brakes. The old shaft looks pretty nice. Oh, that's where that goes. Nice. Total fail. This side's done. Wait on rear end parts to show up. The next thing we've got is I'm going to go ahead and change, since I have the brakes tore apart and I've got to re-bleed everything. I'm going to go ahead and change our rubber brake lines, brake hoses, just because they're original. And while they look okay on the outside, sometimes they will start deteriorating on the inside, and that can aid in you having a spongy pedal. And I've even seen them pull the right or left in the front, so we're going to change the two front ones and the rear one. Alright, I'm back in the shop. I'm going to work on the rear end today. I've got some parts. Let's get these boxes opened up and see what we got to work with. I will say that this is not necessarily going to be a how to rebuild a rear end video. Personally, I don't think I'm qualified to be doing that. There's hundreds of other videos on this app that will explain how to do that in a much better way with much more years of experience and stuff. I know how to do it. I've done it a dozen or so times, but I'm not very efficient. I tend to kind of go back and forth quite a bit. So I will show y'all some things I know and some things I've learned, and honestly the rest of it will probably just be time lapse through so that we can get it done, because this is more of a video on putting this truck back together. So that's my plan. See our full rebuild kit. The bearing, shim, seals, bolts. Guess I should have set up the tripod. It's kind of difficult one-handed. And we got cool stickers. And we got the real good stuff. Brand new Eaton True Track locker. It's going to be pretty nice. I've installed a few of these over the years. Pretty good quality in my opinion. Alright, so first thing we got to do is we get the drive shaft off. We got to get this center section, the bearings and all that out. And we can pull the pinion out. And we'll clean up everything in there real good with some brake clean, and we'll start putting it back together. So let me explain to y'all the reason I wanted to move this over here to the 2-post lift. If we were to do this rear end on the 4-post, we'd have to jack up the axle, get the tires and axle shafts out, which is doable, but I don't have the sliding jacks that go with that lift. The other problem is, when it's jacked up, you put jack stands here, your suspension is basically at ride height, which means the center section of your axle is up here, and you can't get any of this out without taking the spare tire down. Yeah, you can drop the spare tire, but then your head's up in the bottom of the bed floor, and there's just not a lot of room. So if you do it over here, you let the suspension droop all the way down, you have much more room to get in there and work with it. get the locker and new ring gear assembled. Alright, we're gonna make sure we Loctite the bolts. I always forget, they're left-handed threads, because in the normal driving direction these things would unthread if they were right hand. So if you ever taken one of these off and you can't get the bolts to come loose, well, it's probably because you're trying to go backwards. Correct direction in most applications, but backwards for this one. Now this gear is not all the way seated. It's a pretty tight tolerance machine surface, so we're going to easily, slowly kind of use these bolts to suck it up. Now that it's fully seated, we're just going to lightly snug all of them. I'm going to scan this code because I don't remember what the torque spec is. 70 foot-pounds. So it's really difficult to try to torque this on the table. So I like to get them snug and tight where that's where it's supposed to be. And then once we get it in there and we get the pinion in, we can kind of hold the pinion and put some torque to it. Alright, the next thing we have to do is press on these bearings. Alright, we're going to take the pinion bearing off of the old pinion so that I can measure the shims. This is the worst part for me about doing this. You have to do this every time you're done. Perfect. This is the worst part for me about doing rear ends is you have to do this every time when you're doing the pinion shims. Like if you need to change a shim, you got to do this and press it off. So this one has a single shim on it. I'm just going to reuse this. And we're going to press our new bearing onto our new pinion with the factory shim. Alright, so we're going to put our old shim straight on there. I like to polish the two bearing surfaces a little bit. I just use some 300 grit emery cloth. I've had some trouble in the past with this like black oxide primer coating or whatever that stuff is, where you start pressing the bearing down, it's not super smooth and it wants to like jump and it's very violent. And then It makes it difficult if you have to get the bearing back off to change a shim. And that's my personal preference. I don't really know if that's right or wrong. What am I doing? Not super well. Alright, we'll coat our bearings. A little bit of gear oil. Just to help lube them up. This one gets a little tricky because you gotta hammer it on just a little bit. Part is not very fun because these lockers are kind of heavy. You definitely do not want to drop it. Alright, well that one is too big to go in there. So we're going to take our calipers, we're going to measure how thick that is. 0.221. Alright, so now it's locked up, it will not turn, which means the ring gear is too far into the pinion. I'm going to start by swapping these because this shim pack is thinner. We'll swap the shims around and see if we can't move the pinion that way a little bit. Alright, so our backlash should be between like 8 and 10 thousandths. We're currently about 20 thousandths. So that means we need to move our gear, our ring gear into our pinion. A little bit more. To 435 on the passenger side, 2065 on the driver side. We need to tighten it up about 12 thousandths, which I think, see, so 10 thousandths of side to side movement changes the backlash by 7 thousandths. So if we need to go 12 thousandths, let's just go, we need to adjust our shims by about 18 thousandths. All right, that's a win. Right at it, 8 to 9 thousandths. Kind of hard to zero this and get it to hold, but maybe like 8.5. Our backlash is good. Turn all right. Now we get to check our gear mesh. What this is going to tell us is if our pinion gear and our ring gear are in the sweet spot. So what we're looking for ideally is a perfectly centered. You can kind of see how the paint's wearing off pretty close to the center. Perfect situation is center bottom, center top, where the wear mark. So your top is your coast and your bottom is your drive, meaning when you're under load, under power, foot on the throttle, it's wanting to hit down here. When you let off the throttle and you start kind of slowing down, coasting, it puts a little more pressure on the top. It's real hard to achieve perfect unless you kind of machine everything, but I mean these two are pretty close together. You also want kind of a nice stripe right in the middle, width-wise too. All right, I'm gonna go get some lunch and some water. When I get back, we'll throw the shafts in here and torque everything down. All right, rear end is rebuilt. I put fluid in there, but I gotta let that RTV fully dry first. I guess next step is we gotta put the not the rotors, the drums on. Get those kind of adjusted best we can. Well, that was actually relatively easy. Not gonna put the wheels and tires on just yet. I need to get the brakes bled, but I don't have anybody to help me today, so, or at least right now. Well, I was gonna throw the exhaust on, but I can't find the V-band clamp. I think it might have got put up in the box on the shelf upstairs. I need to go find that. But I think this is gonna be it for this episode. I feel like we probably got close to an hour video at this point. So, thanks for watching. Thanks for stopping by and hanging out. And I'll see you on the next one. Y'all have a good day.